Hello, everybody. It's Michael Hollands once again for Sound of the Movies. Today I have the pleasure to be joined by Lesley Barber. On today's episode, we will talk extensively about her career and, of course, about her new projects such as Late Night starring Emma Thompson. Welcome, Lesley.
Hi, Michael. Thanks.
It's great to have you here. Thank you for joining me. Lesley, you started composing music at the age of 10, if I'm correct, and eventually you received a master's degree in composition. Did you always see yourself ending up writing for film, or did you initially have a different career path in mind?
I think in the beginning, I just really wanted to write music, and I didn't know if I would end up writing really musicals or songs or orchestral works. And in the beginning, I was just writing a lot of instrumental music when I was really young. And in looking back, it was actually really cinematic now that I think about it. And then I wanted to really learn a lot about orchestration and conducting and programming. So, I did my music education and was started really getting into writing orchestral music and lots of music for strings and lots of programming. And that took me into writing orchestral works. But I miss collaboration, and one of my first loves is theater and film. So I started writing scores for both of those while I was doing my master's degree, and radio plays and just everything, and really enjoyed getting into character, working with directors, and just cinematic scope of writing was really interesting to me. So once I started writing for film, I was very happy to pursue that line of work and pleasure.
What do you think makes this job so unique and special at the same time?
Well, that's such an interesting question, Michael. I think one of the things that I find really interesting about it is I can just immerse myself in story, and every score, I'm just walking into an incredible world, visual, emotional. Um, it's like walking into a book. It's like walking into a story, and it just animates a process of decision making that's really exciting every time. And each score is its own landscape and its own like emotional and physical, and that's the thing I very much enjoy. And also just the pleasure of being in a cinema and hearing, all the wonderful musicians that I work with, hearing the beautiful sound that is created in a, and hearing, having that experience with the audience, and also having that visual energy so tied up with the music it's just a thrill every time.
Great. Lesley, which genre do you feel most comfortable in? Do you feel more attracted to stories which are close to real life, such as Manchester by the Sea?
Manchester by the Sea, I have to say, for me was very fluidly written. Actually, my demos ended up the very first themes that I wrote, the very first performances I created just through improvising are in the film. So I would say that there's a fluidity in that style that um, some styles feel more like breathing than others, and that one's pretty close to just being able to write very quickly. Um, but if I look at something like Late Night, which I know we're going to talk about, that was really fascinating too, and I wrote it quite quickly, and it was really fun. And there's something so enjoyable about writing comedy and getting into dramatic comedy like Late Night.
Speaking of Manchester by the Sea, it's a very quiet but also very powerful movie, and you wrote the score And the film also features some pre-existing classical pieces of music. Did the director decide to also incorporate these, or did you feel you should combine those elements?
Well, I've worked with Kenny before, and he just is so deeply in touch with classical music. I knew there would be classical pieces in there, and one of the first things we did was talk about what classical pieces might be in there. And I sent him demos, he sent me music that he was listening to and editing to. And so one of the big issues, or one of the things I wanted to do is I wanted to make it seem like it was one world, not licensed versus like licensed in one part of the film and score in another. I wanted my style at times to evoke the harmonies and harmonic rhythm, and I wanted it to bounce off the orchestration and some of the vocal concepts, so that, and even key and harmony, so that you know, there was a cumulative effect of all of that working together. And that was really, it was fun to do that. It was fun to make that decision and to work that way.
Is there any kind of music you like to listen to before you start writing a new project? Something that kind of calms you down and brings you into the right state of mind?
No, I mean, I listen to a lot of hip hop and R&B, and I listen to a lot of pop music, and I don't know. I'm really excited by production. So, you know, if I'm listening to Major Lazar, or I'm listening to, you know, Kendrick Lamar, or you know, I'm fascinated by production. So, I love to drive around in my car, and instead of me deciding what to listen to, just see what's out there, you know, and really listen to the decisions that were made. And, you know, it's like, music is fascinating. You can listen to the same piece of music 100 times in a row, and I don't know why. You know, it's magic. So, that part of it is really interesting to me.
Lesley, you are a member of the Alliance for Women Film Composers. And maybe you could tell our audience a bit more about this organization, what your role is in this organization.
Oh, I'm actually simply a member of that organization. Although, you know, you know, there's a lot of people who really take leadership roles in that organization. But I'm a proud member of that organization, and I think what it's doing is creating a wonderful community for female composers and diverse composers to have a forum for conversation and to promote some of the amazing music that women are writing, both for scores and the broader community of composition.
Many young people are trying to break into the industry every year. Where do you see the biggest challenges? How does one need to handle things creatively and in terms of communication?
Well, I think it's all about story, and it's about getting inside the film as a filmmaker, not just a composer, because you're a member of a larger artistic community inside that filmmaking, whether it's, you know, the producing team and of course the director, who, you know, you want to have intense conversations about, you know, what decisions are going to be made about theme and harmony and ambiances, and there's just so many ways you can go quite often with the score. So, you know, I think those early conversations are really important, and being really open to the unique world that specific film is, because I think that the more inside, I find anyway, that the more inside the story I am and inside the work, a lot of those decisions and a lot of that communication sort of works itself out.
Okay, I would say let's dive right into Late Night, one of your most recent projects, starring Emma Thompson, also John Lithgow, among others. What drew you to this project? What was your main inspiration when you started writing for this picture?
Well, it was really fun to be asked to score it, and I'd worked with Nisha Ganantra before, and she directed the film, and so when she invited me into the project, I jumped at the chance. And then reading Mindy's brilliant script and realizing that that there would be a lot of music in the film, and that also I would need to write immediately a late night band theme, because I guess you've seen the film, but there's, Emma Thompson plays a late night talk show host,
Yep.
and she, like David Letterman or Stephen Colbert, she has a band, so the band plays her theme. So that had to be worked out in really great detail, because we needed that before the film was shot, and we needed to decide everything from what that band looked like, what it sounded like, and of course the theme. So that was my introduction into it right away, right before they started shooting, and then supervising that process and recording all the cues that would need to be played on set, and then from there deciding on themes that could also find themselves permeating the entire score, melodically, harmonically, and branching out into the world of Molly, played by Mindy Kaling, and Catherine Newberry, played by Emma Thompson. So that was really extremely fun, super fun.
You just mentioned David Letterman. Was this show a specific inspiration also for the filmmakers and for you to kind of go into this direction, or were there other late night shows which you thought were a perfect, let's say, example of how to tackle this project, also musically?
Well, I wanted to write a timeless classic late night talk show band theme. And when we first meet Catherine Newberry, she's had this show for some time and it's in need of a shakeup. So I wanted to kind of create a theme that had a classic quality to it, almost Carson-esque, Leno from the 90s, and Letterman, and also she's in New York, so I wanted to have a New York sound. So actually, there's a lot of research that went into just what that band should sound like, and also how it would evolve as Catherine's character evolves, and it reflects her evolution as she joins forces more with the character of Molly. And the quick answer is I researched a lot of the bands, and sort of set off with this drum-driven quality of like Carson-esque type thematics, and then over the course of the film and over the course of many performances of that theme, got closer to Saturday Night Live meets Kimmel, Colbert, Farrell, that kind of thing.
And the film deals with a struggling talk show host played by Emma Thompson, who you just mentioned, and then Molly also joins her team, and Catherine somehow she's almost getting fired from her show, but then she's able to turn things around. And there are also dramatic aspects of the film to boot when she finds out that her husband, played by John Lithgow, suffers from Parkinson's disease. How did you experience these ups and downs in the movie as a composer, and how did this inspire you to write the music?
There's some different qualities to the score. I thought a lot about exterior space and emotionally bigger places, and adding a depth of field to the entire sound in some of the more overt scenes, like writer's room, exterior spaces, and then like when we meet Molly first on the street, and Molly's theme has a kind of energy to it that's a little bit more of walking into this world, I guess. And then for the more intimate scenes, you know, the sound is sort of a lush indie sound. It's orchestrated. There's a lot of the string orchestra ranged in size from maybe a small group to, you know, the sound of 40, 50 strings, I guess. Not a huge orchestra, but enough to create a kind of intimacy. And I think the use of really intimately played guitar and the way I mic'd the piano created a nice quality of sound, very up close sound for those intimate moments. So there's a lot of looking at the performance practice. I mean, I would say that with Manchester by the Sea too. Just it's the quality of the recording and where you choose to record and how you record and the instrumentation and personnel you bring to it. It's like musicians are just so amazing to work with. So, but you could bring musicians in, but it's so important for me anyway, to really decide on the why of how I'm recording something.
The film has quite a few diverse characters. I mean, we talked about Molly and also Catherine. How do you try to underscore these characters who are very different at first? I mean, Catherine seems to be a bit, you know, cold somehow. How do you underscore the personalities?
That's actually pretty intuitive. I can say with Catherine Newberry's character, when we meet her, she's walking into a writer's room that she hasn't visited for years, and I took her theme that's from the band theme and made it into a theme that's sort of walking bass line and drums. And this is the version of the theme she brings into her office in the writing room. It's acerbic, it's tough, it's in control. She's impatient and annoyed with everyone around her, and she's also, there's something also hilariously funny about the way she talks to everyone in the writer's room. So that's sort of my in-house version of the theme. And then with Molly, we first meet her on the streets. So I'm using like a real indie sound, indie drum kit, guitar, really up close, smaller strings, you know, like almost more of an Eleanor Rigby sort of sound, like still lush, but like really up close and more pop oriented, really. And then as the themes start to transmogrify and trade off with each other, we start to hear the connection between Catherine and Molly and the evolution of their relationship. And I think the two themes start to connect in all different ways. And by the end of the film, we have music that hopefully shares the story and emotions and maybe draws their separate worlds together. That's one thing I was trying to do. And there's a lot of music in the film. Actually, I think there's a lot. So it was also trying to make that all very cohesive, you know. And yeah, it was an interesting. It was a really fun, interesting challenge to have all these themes work together.
Right. I mean, there is quite a lot of music in the film. I don't think the original release covers all of that. I've listened to it twice, but I think there is still some material missing.
The soundtrack?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. There's about, Yeah, there was over, I think there was over 70 pieces of music. So it was, but it was, it's always a challenge on the soundtrack to medley all those pieces. So it was interesting working on that. And I could have made the soundtrack, I guess, a lot longer, but I think that what it does is it captures all the points of the story.
Do you think there will be a physical release as well? Up to this point, it has been released as a digital download, and have there been any talks about a CD as well, physical one?
I don't think so. I don't think I mean, sometimes they happen, sometimes they don't. So yeah, I'm not completely sure, but I think right now we're really happy with the way the soundtrack's doing in its release.
But you also had some very nice jazzy vibes in this. I mean, you did a really good job. You had the jazz elements, a great theme, and also the dramatic underscore. So it feels well balanced, I must say.
Thank you. Yeah, it was fun writing those. Writing for the theme, the kind of seven person sort of late night band music. That was extremely fun to write that, and then to re-record it afterwards as well. You know, after the film was edited, to go in and fill out the score even more for those moments.
Can you tell me a bit about your work on American Woman and your most recent project for Weddings and a Funeral, which is based on the 1994 film?
Sure. Four Weddings and a Funeral. I'm just on episode 9 of that. It's been extremely fun to work on, and Mindy Kaling wrote that as well. And it's based on the film Four Weddings and a Funeral. It's a 10 1 hour part series, and it's coming out on 31st on Hulu.
Right.
And it has a lot of music in it. It's been fun.
What kind of music did you write for it? Mostly orchestral or also synthetic or hybrids? Can you tell me that?
Again, it's a real hybrid score.
Right.
I'm working here in the studio with a couple of musicians because there's really tight turnarounds. I've written the entire score since May 10th, and it's just been several weeks, and I have also had a recording date every couple of weeks with the orchestra in Bratislava to fill out the orchestrations. So I have a core sound of keyboards and I did a lot of drum programming, a lot of beats for it. And a little bit like Late Night in that there's a lot of beats, and then with orchestra and with some acoustic guitar and almost an Ed Sheeran kind of quality, but really lush. And also some electric guitar, lots of bass-driven rhythm. And yeah, it sort of still captures, though, some of the quality of the original Four Weddings and a Funeral. So I listened to a lot of English pop music while I was working on it, and that was really fun, especially orchestral pop.
Great. Looking forward to it. I also enjoyed the 90s movie, the British film. It's starring Hugh Grant. It was quite fun. Quite fun.
Mm-hmm. This is really fun too. I think
really great.
Yeah, you have to watch it. It's fun.
Yeah, I most certainly will. I'm looking forward to it. Lesley, thank you so very much for taking so much time out of your busy schedule for me today. I really enjoyed and loved talking to you, and I hope we get to do many more interviews in the future. And
Thank you, Michael. This was great. Yeah.